In the hallowed halls of justice, a jury stands as a final arbiter between truth and consequence. Their duty is sacred, to listen impartially, to judge fairly, and to uphold the very essence of justice. But what happens when this duty is compromised? Each juror carries out the weight of a decision that can alter the course of a life. With open minds and the ability to deliver an impartial decision, their verdicts resonate beyond the courtroom, affecting families, communities, and the very essence and fabric of society. Yet, this power is not invaluable. Medgar Evers, a beacon of hope during the civil rights movement and someone who did what others were scared to do.
Let me say this to you. I had one merchant to call me, and he said, "We don't need nigger business. So let us not trade merchants down on Capitol Street, feel the economic pinch."
Sadly, Medgar Evers was assassinated on June 12, 1963. His death was a direct challenge to the prevailing racial injustices of this time.
I made a run for the front door, turned on the light, and there he was.
That was Merle Evers who described what she saw at the scene of the crime. Byron Della Beckwith, a widely known white supremacist, was charged with Evers' murder. Yet, in two separate trials, an all-white jury failed to reach a verdict, allowing Beckwith to just walk free. During the final arguments of the case, Assistant Hinds County District Attorney Bobby DeLaughter told the jury, "It's a kind of murder that every human should be sickened by. The kind of murder by an ambush is the most vile, savage, and reprehensible." It wasn't until 1994, almost 30 years later, after decades of advocacy by Evers' family and the civil rights group, that a jury finally convicted Beckwith.
Came as shocking and tragic news to all people of goodwill. I think this reveals that we still have a long, long way to go.
This time, the jury was diverse, reflecting the community's values. The conviction was a testament to the power of a fair and representative jury. What was different this time is that the voices were heard instead of seen, but it also highlighted the failures of the system that allowed the racial biases to influence the justice for this amount of time. Despite any legal advancements, racial discrimination in jury persists. Prosecutors have historically used premature challenges to exclude black jurors, undermining the fairness of the trials. This is an example of one of the ways that our system demonstrates microaggression acts. Further studies reveal that in certain jurisdictions, black jurors are struck at a significantly higher rates than white jurors, casting doubts on the impartiality of the justice system. In American courtrooms, justice is supposed to be blind, but often it isn't. Political affiliation amongst jurors can quietly and dangerously create bias thinking. These political identities influence how we interpret justice. Studies show that jurors who identify as more conservative political views are statistically more likely to presume guilt, especially towards black defendants. More than half the time, the result that we get isn't justice, it's judgment without understanding. That is why jury selection must be done with care, not just to check boxes, but to ensure that every person is given one thing that they deserve: a fair chance. Serving on a jury is far more than just a civic duty. It's an honor, a responsibility to weigh in evidence, voice your judgment, and ultimately help decide someone's future. But above all, what must remain is fairness and the absence of bias. It's a rigorous process, especially in the high-stakes trials jurors undergo screening not only for a bias, but also through the psychological and social dynamic of evaluations. But what if fairness requires more than a neutrality? What if it also requires knowledge? What if jurors had to take an IQ test, not to discriminate, but to ensure clarity, critical thinking, and an open-minded decision-making? We are shaped by what we come from, but more than that, we are shaped by what we see, who raises us, and the world around us. This is the heart of nature versus nurture debate. Truly, no one is born with hate in their heart, it's taught. But it can also be unlearned because the nature of being a human is a desire to do good and to change. It's not about where you grew up, it's about the willingness to grow, to think clearly, to listen without prejudice, and to decide fairly. And eventually, you'll realize that justice begins not in the court, but in your mind itself. What makes a juror choose one side over the other? Psychologists say it's rarely just the evidence. Pre-trial biases, cognitive biases, and even the way expert witnesses speak can all tilt the scale of justice. And long before the gavel falls, the mind has already made up its mind. Once that bias is formed, it becomes a lens. The prosecution story feels familiar, logical, even trustworthy. The defense? Dismissed without a second thought. At that moment, it's not about who's right, it's just about who feels right. Some propose IQ tests for jurors to ensure that they can process complex cases. But intelligence isn't always the same as wisdom, and it certainly isn't the same as fairness. To many, the idea of a test sends a dangerous message saying, you're not good enough to sit at that jury. No mind is perfect, and no system will ever truly be fair. But if we exclude the people based on how they score on a test, we may risk losing all the voices that matter the most. Instead, we must equip and educate, create spaces for all to understand the law and the weight of their decisions, because justice isn't about perfection, it's about participation. Justice is not a mere ideal, it is a practice that demands vigilance, integrity, and inclusivity. Only through the unwavering commitment to fairness that we can all ensure the scales of justice remain balanced for all. The jury's duty is to not just decide who's guilty or innocent, but to uphold the very principles upon which our society stands on.